Good morning. It's still good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Byron Payne, and I will be rapporteuring for this session. And we will be in the hand of an excellent moderator, Professor Maria Parsley, who is UNESCO Chair in Data Sciences and also.
Excuse me, sir. Can we please turn on the cameras so that the online participants can see what's happening in the room?
Okay, the camera was not online. Do I need to repeat everything that I just said? No. Okay, I was about to introduce Professor Maria Parsley. She is a professor at University of Exeter and Essex, sorry, University of Essex. And she's also the chair of UNESCO Chair on Data Sciences and works with UNESCO for several years from now. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Excellent. So good morning, everyone. Salam alaikum, and welcome to panel 6, which is the implementation of the UNESCO Open Data Guidelines in support of transparency, innovation, and e-governance. Before we begin, I would like to thank UNESCO for the very kind invitation to moderate for this panel, but also the government of Uzbekistan for the very warm welcome that we have all received and their hospitality, which has been amazing. So thank you. So we've been here now for 2 days, a day and a half. We're continuing our conversations. And what it's clear is that advances in AI and data science methods, fueled by the proliferation of data and availability of computational power, present quite a unique opportunity to governments and organizations to take advantage of these for providing better services to citizens and improving the quality of life and human condition in general. Building on open data and AI and open solutions can help make the most of these advances and deliver benefits that can be reproduced across contexts and adopt and adapt solutions to use by member states to suit their own individual needs. So the focus of this panel is on the implementation of the Open Data Guidelines, and during the panel, we will be hearing about the value of openness of data for AI, for tracking and achieving the SDGs, but also we will be exploring the challenges of open data and the governance in this context. A highly desirable outcome for this panel is to contribute to the Tashkent Declaration and ensure that open data and open solutions are also covered in some form in the declaration and included. And we would welcome the audience's contributions in shaping the outcome of this session. Let's not forget that we are here to celebrate the International Date for Access to universal access to information. So I just want to draw your attention to this again. We are here to celebrate, but also find positive ways forward. I am joined by a distinguished international panel today. We have a couple of speakers that are joining us online from across the world, and I will be introducing them. But the structure of the panel and the session is going to be along the lines of enabling our presenters to make their interventions. And then hopefully we will be able to have some time towards the end of the session to open up the conversation to our audience, give you the opportunity to ask questions and consider what you have heard today and respond. So I will be asking our speakers to limit their interventions to about 8 to 9 minutes. I don't want to seem rude and interrupt you, but I'm very conscious that we are standing between the audience and the lunch. And I don't want to be in the way of the lunch. So please, if I can ask you to be brief and along these guidelines, it will be very much appreciated by our audience. So I don't want to delay this any longer because I've talked long enough. I just want to start by announcing our first speaker, Professor Lambros Terioulas, who is the UNESCO Chair in AI and Data Science for Society. He previously was a chair and professor in business analytics at the Surrey Business School in the UK. Now he's currently the professor of data science and AI at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. So Lambros, could I ask you to open up our session and talk to us about the current state of play of open data and open solutions, please? Thank you.
Thank you. A recent initiative by UNESCO to open up content, tools, and processes have been recognized to support the flow of information and knowledge freely, thereby informing responses to global challenges, among other things. They comprise open education resources, open access mainly to scientific information, free and open source software and open data, while a new addition to the mix recently is open AI. There are two important elements in openness, legal and technical. When we talk about legal openness, talk about really about applying proper open licenses, which allows free access and the use of data. And really, you must be allowed to get the data legally, build on it, and share it. Technical openness, well, it's about existing some processes where you have no technical barriers to use that data, right? For example, providing data as printouts on paper, that's makes information extremely difficult to work with, or if you have tables in PDF files, etc. So open definition has various requirements for technical openness, such as requiring the data must be machine readable and available in bulk in sufficient quantity, not only quality. The aim here is to enable a more sustainable approach to building information systems that can serve as a global public good, rather than reinventing the wheel every time. Now, what is open government data? It is simply government data that is freely available to anyone in open format and a possibility of redistribution in any form without restrictions. Government data may contain various databases, including data indirectly owned by government agencies, and is important in enabling businesses and organizations to expand activities and develop innovative services and products, generating additional benefits and strengthening the economy. The public sector collects, produces, or manages a wealth of data. By making this data available, easily accessible, and reusable by citizens and businesses, governments can improve accountability and transparency, create new business opportunities, and better inform both citizen engagement and their own decision-making. Open government data is significant to the political, economic, social, and cultural development of the country. Open data can encourage the public to actively participate in government services and activities, thus improving the transparency of government departments. In addition, various social factors can be mobilized to create more economic and social value from government data. Open data, especially open government data, is a tremendous resource that is as yet largely untapped. Many individuals and organizations collect a broad range of different types of data to perform their tasks. Government is particularly significant in this respect, both because of the quantity and the centrality of the data it collects, but also because most of the government data is public by law, public data by law, and therefore could be made open and made available to others to use. It is already possible to point to a large number of areas where open government data can create value. Some of these areas are shown here in this, in the bottom of this slide here. For example, in terms of transparency, projects such as the Finnish tax-free or the British Does My Money Go shows how citizens' tax revenue is being spent by government. Open data can also help you to make better decisions in your own life and enable you to be more active in society. Economically, open data is hugely important also. Several studies estimate that the economic value of open data is at $7 several tens of billions of euros just only in the European Union. New companies, services, and products and are possible by reusing open data. So we can actually deliver a lot of new things using open data. It's also a value to government itself, right? For example, increasing government efficiencies. Also, open data can help us to assess our progress and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. New sets or combination of data can create new knowledge and insights, which can lead to whole new fields of application. This untapped potential can be realized if we turn public government data into open data. This will only happen, however, if it is really open, with no restrictions to its reuse by others. Every restriction will exclude people from reusing public data and make it harder to find valuable ways of doing that. For this potential to be realized, public data needs to be open data, therefore. The achievement of strategic development goals can be done in three ways. I mean, it can be, first of all, open data can be facilitator of standards, a tool for accountability, and also an evidence-based for impact assessment. In terms of standards, open data can help establish consistent definitions and units of measurement. Over time, as more people adopt standards, collect and open up data, this will result in improved data accuracy and completeness. By encouraging open data standards, development initiatives can build off of existing data sets, schemas, and databases to contribute to a broader evidence-based. The United Nations Data Revolution Program, which established the Global Partnership on Sustainable Development Data to support the SDGs, describes the need for data standards in its report, A World That Counts. That report states the need to develop a global consensus on principles and standards, establish a global consensus on data to standardize the principles and reporting legal issues, etc. Now, the Open Data Charter also is an international agreement that grew out of a G8 summit agreement, also emphasizes the importance of being able to compare data across sectors and countries through the use of structured and standardized formats. Secondly, impact assessment. Facilitated by common units of measurement, open data can help gauge the impact of development initiatives over time and geolocations as well. For example, open data can establish benchmarks to measure progress against the SDGs, both within each countries and between countries, and it can reveal inequalities and disparities in income, wealth, and access to government services, and provide the basis for assessing progress over time. On global level, this shared data also makes it possible to measure progress on those SDGs that require international coordination. Accountability, the third aspect, can be done by releasing open data about a full range of SDGs initiatives. In this way, government institutions can show their commitment to the SDGs and hold themselves accountable for the results. This transparency and accountability can help engage citizens in working on the strategic development goals as well. Now, a new concept recently is OpenAI, and of course, open algorithms. The concept of OpenAI and open algorithms has been developed over the past decade with the goal to address the needs of individuals and organizations to use data and AI in a privacy-preserving manner. To achieve this, the following fundamental principles of open algorithms have been developed. We need to move the algorithm to the data instead of pulling data from various repositories. That is, data must never leave its repository. This is consistent with the first principle. I'm sorry, the slide is not going. And vetting of algorithms as well is important. It's important to algorithms to be studied, reviewed, and vetted by experts. The goal here is to provide all entities in the ecosystem. Sorry. Sorry, can we fix the slides, please?
To the slides.
I think the clicker does not. Okay. Excuse me.
Can you tell me, sorry, the slide that you want, because we have changed.
I don't think this works. Sorry. Yeah. Can you go to the AI algorithms? AI, OpenAI and OpenAI algorithms slide?
This one?
No, the previous one. Yeah. So the vetting of algorithms is important, and also a default to safe results. OpenAI should protect privacy as a primary goal, and this applies to individuals as well as organizational data privacy. Now, barriers in open data and OpenAI for the public sector. There are various and many barriers, and my distinguished colleagues in the panel will talk about this, so I would not linger on this a lot, especially in terms of institutional and governance, really barriers and challenges here. I think Miriam will be talking more on this. We have come up with a long, detailed list of these challenges, really. And together with the UNESCO Open Solutions team, we have been working on a state-of-the-art review of open data and OpenAI. The next slide, please. So on open data and OpenAI in government, and based on its findings, we have developed a policy framework, which you can see here, to inform and aid policymakers in this process. The pillars of the framework are leadership and commitment, developing an open government data strategy and culture, capacity building, stakeholder participation, creating open government data ecosystems, data sharing, data privacy and misuse, open data security, data standardization, and resource management. Then you will be able to find more in the draft we have prepared. I'll go to the next slide. Thank you. So the key takeaways, what can we do in terms of open data and OpenAI in government? Many organizations gather a wide variety of various forms of data, and governments are particularly important in this, because large amounts of data are collected, stored, secured, processed, managed, shared, and used in public sector entities. International cross-border data flows are essential for fostering resilience, growth, and innovation in both developed and developing economies. Knowledge societies value openness of and access to data, right of information, and the use and sharing of data as key enablers. The barriers to openness are significant, and the potential solutions are varied and almost inevitably context-specific. So it is important to, first of all, create networks of openness for data and AI in government, in the public sector, implement guidelines for openness of data and AI, and foster the growth of open technology ecosystems for open solutions through open data standards and open data repositories for AI. And examples are the 5-star data plan in open science that my distinguished guest, a colleague from China in the panel here, will talk about, I think. And also government's frameworks for data and AI, and data alliances enabling the use of private data for public good. Miriam and Nick will be talking about this a bit later. With these points, we hope to make an additional contribution to the Tashkent Declaration in terms of the importance of open solutions. It is important to balance the trade-off of openness, which is a public good, versus privacy as a fundamental human right, and manage risks and secure the necessary resources both financial and human capital, that is, funding infrastructure, necessary human capacities. Thank you so much, please.
Thank you, Lambros, for this incredibly insightful overview of where we are and the challenges ahead, presented in quite a condensed way. We're going to be hearing more, but you set the scene very well. And I would now like to first introduce Professor Zhenghu Zhu, who is joining us from China. As I said, we have a distinguished and very international panel with us today. He's a professor at the Institute of Geographic Sciences and Natural Resources in the Chinese Academy of Sciences and an academician of the Chinese Academy of Engineering. He's mainly engaged in the research of remote sensing and geographical information systems and its connection with geoscience, including knowledge mining of spatial data, geological intelligent computing, and other areas. He has won 15 national and provincial science and technology awards, including 5 national science and technology progress awards. Zhenghu, we have heard about the current state of open data from Lambros and Open Solutions and the challenges in an e-government context, as well as a proposed framework. Could I ask you to tell us a bit more on your perspective on the value of openness of data for scientific research, please?
Okay, thank you. Could you show me the, yeah. Okay, thanks, Maria. Distinguished guest, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my great honor to attend this panel, International Day for Universal Access to the Information. As we know, next please. Next slide, please. As we all know, we live in a data-rich and a data-linked world. For example,
can we see the slides? Sorry, Zhenghu, can we see the slides, please, on the screen? Because the audience in the room cannot see the slides. Thank you very much.
I can see the slides.
No, don't worry, Mr. Zhu. We just need that the Zoom window is shown on the screen.
You need me to present?
Slides. We are okay. We're good to go. Please continue. I'm sorry.
Okay. So for example, 100 of the remote satellite connect the PB level data about our living Earth each day. Next slide, please. All this data can help us to watch our Earth globally, dynamically. And today we can use this data to count how many of the, to count how many trees in our Earth. And the Human Geoid project also created a huge volume of the data, share data with the worldwide corporation. We can use this data to help us to do a lot of the medical research. All this data will be available now. Next, please. For the scientific community, we try to put all this data be available to the scientific research, to the government decision-making, even to the public. This are what we are to do. Scientific data is really precious resources for all of the world, for our human society. Next, please. And now we have the citizen science becomes a very crucial point in the area of the big light. A lot of number of the hobbyists without professional training can also do the scientific research. It's tremendous. It should be contributed open the data, open the AI, open the everything to the public. Next, please. So the open data, it becomes a very important part of our open science recommendation. This will be adopted by the 193 countries in the last year. And also open science, open AI for the public, for the human society to do the new kind of research. Next, please. But we still face lots of obstacles, different kind of obstacles, such as big data, but isolated data. The dark data, long tail data, we cannot make full use of the ours data. We need a collaborative efforts to have more data open technically and legally. Here, I would like to share some of the point about the technical point and the legal point. Next, please. From the technically, the very simple way, just the contract of the national and the international scientific data center to share the data by all of the world is a very good example is World Data Center, which launched the last century, the middle of the last century, should be the 1950s. All this data will cover 4 areas. We call the WDC A, B, C, D. D is for the geoscience. So this very good efforts to offer the world of the scientific community. Next, please. Such as United States has collected all of data and also developed a lot of the science data centers, such as NASA has a very global satellite data center. Next, please. And also, we can China has created a 20 national data center to open and sharing by the China scientists and also world scientists. Next, please. And also in the world is ICSO. I just did about 5 years ago to find a new system after WDC and a world data system, try to get long-term contribution for the universal and equal access to scientific data and information. It's now is really open already. Next, please. And also here has another very good example for the geoscience. We call it Pangea. It's the biggest of the continent. It's set up since 1993, but now he already current 595 record programs and about the 400 million, 5 million data sets and about 19 billion data sets inside. It's really rich for the scientific research area. And also, its also data will be published in the published format, can be accessed, understood by all of the Earth. Next, please. Except the technique, we also need legally, because we need a rights copyright, such as fair, such as trust principles. Lots of the scientists currently can try to set up some legal system to try to help everybody can access, can use, can understand the data. Next, please. The most favorite populator is fair principles, fundable, accessible, interactable, and reusable. Barry Lee provide 5 steps open data plan. First step is make data available online in any format. Second, make the data available in a structured format. And then 3 lines, make data available in a non-proprietary open format. And 4 steps, use a same data directories to deload things so that all the user can point at the data. Last, link data all together to the all data, make the data become network. We call it network. It's really tremendous. So we try to pick this one. In this year, the UNESCO and also International Union of the Geoscience proposed a big data science program called Deep Time Digital Earth. Try to connect all the data by all the scientists in the world together, and the data and the knowledge for the geoscience, and then to distribute data-driven discovery in study Earth evolution through deep time. This will become very good exercise for the data sharing. We hope networks together to have more data open. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for clearly making the case for open data for research purposes. Senku, and this is to address important problems that affect the entire world rather than just scientific curiosities that we may have as academics. So thank you very much for making the case for this, and also mentioning a very important word, which is often perhaps ignored, and that's interdisciplinarity, in that if we want to find proper solutions, we need to work together across the discipline. So again, thank you very much for this intervention. Next, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Ernesto Damiani, who is a professor of computer science at the University of Milan, where he leads the Architecture's Research Lab. He is also the Senior Director of the Artificial Intelligence and Intelligent Systems Institute at Khalifa University at UAE. And his research spans security, big data, and knowledge processing, areas in which he has published over 400 peer-reviewed articles and books. And he's also senior member of the IEEE and the distinguished scientist of the ACM. So a very warm welcome to you, Ernesto. Can I ask you to tell us a bit more about how we can go about and derive more value from data by perhaps working in a more collaborative way and creating data commons? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had a few slides. I don't know if we can show them.
Have we got?
Should be there, but. So let's see if the slides are available or not. Okay, wonderful. I don't want to keep the audience waiting. So I can start by saying something anyway while the first slide comes up. So I would like to bring the experience, not just a general view on, okay, so this is me, and we can go to the next slide. Okay, thank you very much. Next slide, please. The slide support is a bit of a problem. I would like to say that I will bring here the experience and some, okay, the next. The experience of the UAE experience, because what we are doing in the UAE, and I think that the UAE is an example of a region, but not only on a single region, of multiple regions, where we are doing what we are doing is trying to build a knowledge society. Well, after oil, knowledge society, and knowledge society is based on data. And one of the major sources of data that are of interest in building this type of knowledge society is what I call the behavioral data. So this is the slide just before this one. Let me see if I can myself move the slides around. Yeah. Okay, so we are talking behavioral data here. I want to focus on this. Let me see if, okay. Should be. I learned that you have to be very cautious in pressing the button. Okay, so behavioral data is data that puts together what people do, who people are. So this is all heritage, right? So in a sense, would attributes about people, and also the context in which people do something. And we are interested in this data in the region because we wanted to build a knowledge society where you have a digital transformation, not only in the workday, but in the entire experience of the people living. And this is something, you know, that makes behavioral data a very important data source. And this is something that poses new problems, because the behavioral data, you know, put together open data that are provided by the public sector, specifically data about who people are, or the context where people are doing something, like, for example, weather data or census data, with behavior data that is collected by private parties, normally, with the consensus, of course, with the consent of people, but that belongs to the private party. And normally, you have immediately something that is transformation by fusion. The value comes from the fact that you put together the open data with the data that you gathered yourself. But this also gives rise to what I called an anti-commons trend, because when you put together, you create the fusion between the open data that you get for free and the data you gathered yourself about, for example, people behavior, you are getting an added value by the creation of the relations. And this added value makes the ensemble valuable. And normally it is taken out of the public domain, even without claiming legal rights. It's just physically taken out of the public domain and put somewhere where the rest of the people cannot access it, because it's valuable to someone to provide the service or to design a new product. So basically, we are in this situation in which if you want to encourage the creation of behavioral data, you have to handle this problem. But there is even one step that we discussed over breakfast this morning. So I wanted to add it to the perspective. This is the advent of machine learning. In these regions, we are skipping the algorithmic age. We are immediately into what I call the machine learning. Most of the knowledge society services that rely on this behavioral data that I mentioned are directly designed as machine learning and AI based. We are not going through the traditional algorithmic type of applications. We are directly going to large scale models. And this is another, transformation of the data. The fusion of the data become parameters. And those parameters are basically the result of the training of models that themselves are fed with the behavioral data that I was mentioning at the beginning. So we have, this transformation also means an anti-commons, because the person who trained the model and has the parameters now has some different knowledge than the original raw data that were sort of put together. So I would like to call your attention to two paradigms that are of major importance in this trend that we are doing a lot in the region, and I'm sure other regions, even regions which have less internet penetration or basic ICT technology, they will use one of these paradigms. I will tell you which one. So first of all, we have federated learning. Federated learning is the key of data sharing these days, much more than sharing the raw data or putting the raw data together. So this is something, of course, that in the guidelines of UNESCO is already mentioned, is something that UNESCO knows, but I think we should underline that for some region, this is the key mechanism for data sharing, the sharing of the parameters, the federated learning paradigm. And the second one, which is even more important for other regions, is transfer learning, in which what you actually do is you get the data already in form of parameters, and then you add your own data on top. Typical for regions where you don't have data gathering capability, you buy transfer learning model, and then you use the little data you have to try to calibrate. And this is another mechanism that I see coming up a lot. So transfer learning and federated learning are the only two I will mention due to time restriction, but we could go on. Those are mechanisms for sharing of information, which comes from the raw data, contains implicitly the open data, because the open data have been fused to train the model. But this is not the same thing physically and format-wise. So I will try to quickly go to my point, which is, of course, I could tell you that these days, this type of large-scale pre-trained models are basically the currency, or in the data supply chain, they come after the raw data, and they are the currency of exchange in a number of data sharing initiatives across countries in the region. Now, challenges. Well, of course, how can we sort of take into account the entire supply chain, not just the raw data at the beginning, the after fusion, the transformation, the federated and transfer learning stages? How can we take all these into account? In the end, we are talking of value that comes from data that originally were labeled as open. So we need to be able to sort of have a transparent process for this data supply chain. We cannot leave the data become private without scrutiny. We cannot leave that. We can accept that. We need this type of transformation of the data to be transparent. Of course, if someone puts value into it, we don't want to put, well, of course, the economics needs to work. If you put value, you need to be able to take out value, but this must be done in a transparent fashion. So I think that the guidelines already draw away, but we need what? Well, this is the challenge, how to apply the guidelines in this new context. And I think that, well, of course, the region, the region of the Gulf is one of the regions where this can be done because we can provide use cases, but we need help. First of all, we need to updating the data governance framework to put the parameters as first-class citizens. After fusion, after transformation, the data are not just the raw data. The data are also the knowledge bases on which the models basically make their decisions. These are data. My parameters are the data of someone else. So along the supply chain, we need the data governance framework to develop itself to include this type of data. I believe this is my point anyway. Secondly, what can we do? Use cases. Use cases in Europe. There's a lot of things going up. The Gaia X consortium, the European Commission have basically pushing in that direction. Less we have in other regions of the world, and I think it's even more critical in other regions than it is in Europe or in the US, because we don't have the raw data there. A lot of the decisions will be made based on models that rely on pre-trained and a little bit of calibration. So there we need to have use cases, I believe, in which we show the application. And finally, behavioral data representation or data representation in general. I put behavioral, and this is the last bullet. I put behavioral because it shows the critical fusion between proprietary behavioral data on one side and the public open data on the other. But we need to enhance a new generation of people, experts in regulations, regulatory framework, but data representation techniques as well. So these three, I believe, is a transdisciplinary effort to build this talent pool, and I think that UNESCO can play a great role in encouraging this thing. So I think this is everything I wanted to say, and I hope I stayed in the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ernesto, for bringing this perspective from another part of the world, because this is really important. As a computer scientist, I've had a lot of projects trying to work with public sector and local government and government sections in the UK. And though there's all the willingness in the world to share data and open up data, very often there are major obstacles in such parts of the government giving you access to the data. So federated learning and transfer learning at this moment in time look like really good ways forward to avoid the problems of data sharing. I have spent currently about 14 months trying to negotiate the data sharing agreement with an organization, and we're not quite there yet. So we need new ways of working, and thank you, Ernesto, for bringing this to our attention. So thank you again for your contribution to this. I now want to introduce you to our next speaker, Miriam Stankovic, who is a senior digital policy specialist with the Center for Digital Acceleration, DAI. She has research experience in data protection and governance, intellectual property and technology law, regulatory impact assessment of emerging technologies such as AI, blockchain, and other emerging technologies, and technology transfer. She has also served as a senior legal and policy advisor for major international organizations such as the International Telecommunication Union, the World Bank, World Intellectual Property Organization, the African Union, and the European Union. Miriam, could you tell us a bit more about AI and the need for data governance in this context?
Can I use yours?
Of course.
Okay. Super. So I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. So I'm going to focus on the challenges of open data, opening government data sets and artificial intelligence. We live in an era where machines learn on their own. Self-driving cars communicate with smart transportation infrastructure and smart devices, and algorithms respond to and predict our needs and wants. And we often read newspaper articles that say, apps know where you were last night, and they're not keeping it secret. So privacy included, or regulators scramble to stay ahead of self-driving cars. artificial intelligence, machine learning. And headlines like this have been a central challenge to regulators across the globe. Now, AI solutions, as we have seen, can help address critical global challenges. And I'm talking about on behalf of all developing countries, low and middle income countries, because my work is focused mostly or exclusively on these countries. So AI solutions, they offer tremendous opportunities in terms of solving global challenges, but they come also with unforeseeable outcomes if we don't have clear regulations and ethical guidelines. Now, self-learning algorithms already govern our news feeds, and they drive our cars, and they take our jobs away. Okay, so how can we ensure that this technology benefits people widely? And if AI and autonomous machines play a crucial role in our everyday lives, the key question is what sort of normative and ethical framework should guide their design? Now, in a perfect world, using algorithms should lead to unbiased and fair decisions. And this is my work, algorithmic decision-making and provision of public services. However, many algorithms come with inherent biases, and this is where my work comes into play, because I raise awareness among key policy stakeholders about the challenges that come with AI, and one of the greatest challenges is bias. So AI comes with bias, and bias can seep through the process through many points. And then even a well-designed algorithm must make decisions that are based on inputs, right, from a flawed and erratic reality. And algorithms can also make judgment errors when faced with unfamiliar scenarios. And then this is even more pronounced in the context of low and middle income countries, and we should be aware of this. So the current AI surge also comes surrounded by other contentious issues such as job loss, human rights, effects of automated decision making. So we need to think in terms, not just in terms of ethical frameworks, but also human rights frameworks. A centralization of control, surveillance through facial recognition technology and biometrics, and information and cybersecurity, right? So this has prompted key international, regional and national stakeholders to look for ways to maximize the benefits of AI while also putting safeguards in order to minimize the risks. And in this context, open data is essential. Okay, so the AI community, and more specifically Web 3.0 and semantic web research was the birthplace of many open data pioneers, right? So we have the semantic web as described by Tim Berners-Lee in 2001 as the evolution of a web that consisted largely of documents for humans to read to one that included data and information for computers to manipulate. Now, in high-income countries, they're getting there. In low and middle-income countries, they're not getting there because of different reasons, such as data infrastructure, digital and data skills, as already mentioned, and other impediments. So later on, Tim Berners-Lee and his colleagues, they also discussed their efforts to kickstart Web 3.0 using public sector information. Now, open data is a philosophy intends to encourage access to and comparison of data from different sources to create value and new applications. And this is great. However, some of the most significant applications of artificial intelligence today use big data from private companies and not from the government sector. And private companies that can tailor the data for their machine learning needs by collecting millions of inputs from user and customer interactions daily. And this is a problem, especially in the countries of Africa and other low and middle income countries where they do not have local data sets. Okay, so this is a problem that we should talk about in terms of opening data sets and using AI and algorithms for open data. Now, this is true, even though some applications of AI do draw upon open government data sets to train models, but then we have the problem of intellectual property, right? So ownership. Currently, many AI applications sidestep government data for the most part and operate on privately held data. And this sparks the debate for data governance, which is very complicated, and it's not the scope of my presentation today. Data ownership systems, data rights, and regulations of AI and AI use, and also AI outcomes. This is very complicated. Right now, the governance is really patchy, although certain international organizations are coming forward with models how we should solve this, not just from regulatory perspective, but also technical perspective. Now, AI and open data interconnect in three fundamental ways. So number one, machine learning models use open data. And these models can also be used to transform unstructured data into structured open data. Second, sophisticated algorithms, that is machine learning algorithms, can analyze open data at the output level in ways that would take too long to perform manually. Now, based on the contents of open data sets, properly constructed algorithms can discover patterns that support decisions and guide actions. And also, algorithms and machine learning models themselves can be output as open data. Okay, so this is also another opportunity in the realm of open data and AI. And now, open data availability often impacts data accessibility. The fewer open data sets mean less possibility for academia and micro and small medium size enterprises to conduct AI research or to implement algorithmic techniques. And this is more pronounced in the context of developing countries, low and middle income countries. Now, with respect to challenges, I'm going to highlight several. Open government data has long been recognized as a key asset to boost AI research, domestic AI research and development. However, the adoption of AI by open data communities has been rather slow. Now, numerous AI techniques and algorithms rely on confidential and proprietary information. So this is IP, this is anti-commons, okay? So we need to be aware of that. Now, a key challenge in the effective deployment of open data for AI governance is the exclusion of data invisible groups. And we have started talking about this. We need data justice. We need to connect the unconnected because otherwise they're not going to be represented in data sets that AI is based upon. So my key takeaways, so what governments and international development actors can do. We need agile and innovative AI and open data governance frameworks. These can be regulatory, these can be technical solutions. We need to take into account data protection rules here, privacy first and foremost, and then sectoral regulatory frameworks, because not all data is created equal, you know, so there are differences between different open data sets. Government stakeholders should make data useful by making them, and this the previous panelists talked about this, accessible, timely, of high quality and relevant to local contexts. One of the panelists mentioned fair data. I would also add localize and also contextualize. So the context is really important. The context is really important. Now, what else? And then we should also strive to build adequate data skill capacity. So this goes for the academia. It goes for the private sector, but first and foremost, it goes for governments. Okay, so if you do not have digital transformation officers, and one example that comes to mind is Ukraine, for example. They had a system of digital transformation officers that has been replicated in other countries who understand what they're talking about. Okay, so the opening up of government data sets and using AI is going to be impossible. And also do not forget the data invisible groups. So promote inclusiveness, reduce digital inequalities. And this is because big data and AI analytics can exacerbate social exclusion by overlooking groups that are difficult to reach or not represented in publicly available data. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Miriam, for this intervention. And may I just say that you're not playing devil's advocate. You made really important points. It is very important that we are aware of the biases that can be introduced at different points in the machine learning pipeline. And here I will make a personal intervention in the panel. We talk about AI and ML, and we use the terms interchangeably. We have made a lot of progress in machine learning because of the availability of data. However, we are still to make progress in other areas of AI. Machine learning is one area of AI, not all of AI. So I just wanted to make this very important distinction, and thank you for providing us with almost an introduction to our next speaker. And may I now introduce you to Nick Neftenov, who is a proposal and project coordinator in AI and IP research and an AI and IP research associate at the Tambourine Innovation Ventures. His area of expertise is in intellectual property, law, innovation, entrepreneurship, emerging technologies, digital transformation, traditional knowledge and culture, the Sustainable Development Goals, and technological developments in LDCs. He worked at the World Bank office in Skopje, the Republic of North Macedonia, where he provided support on the Skills Development and Innovation Support Project. And this is where he is joining us from now today. So Nick, we talked about open data, the value of open data, and towards the end of your intervention, Miriam talked about invisible groups. So I believe you are going to be offering us some very useful insights in this regard. So may I invite you to join us, please, and talk to us.
Thank you for that introduction, Maria. And thank you, Miriam, for setting the scene for my presentation. So what I'll be talking about is the effective use of data and that in government and the departments and agencies that underpin its operations. And data is actually an integral part of the public sector digitalization and digital transformation. So governments nowadays can use and reuse data infinitely to better understand and design services to fit the needs of their citizens much better and deliver positive outcomes for the wider public and promote the effective use of public resources, transparency, and accountability. But AI's development and uptake will, even though it will undoubtedly provide us with numerous opportunities to address global challenges, by rethinking how we integrate information, analyze data, and use the resulting insights for improved decision-making, the data that we use for AI systems can also create risks that must be addressed to avoid undesirable outcomes. Therefore, we will need governments to be brave enough to face an increasingly difficult feat and tasks of uncoupling the Gordian data knot to effectively and equitably deploy AI solutions. So we need to create and deploy AI for good. And for that, we need data justice as a critical challenge posed by the effective and contemporary deployment of AI for good exposes many inequalities, which exclude data invisible groups. So the access of information and our collective values, as we all know, form the bedrock of many facets of our democracies and the rule of law. Therefore, these facts inform public debate and evidence-based policymaking. However, in the information that we have from our offline world, we have also flawed data sets and coding. These flawed information that are from the offline world unintentionally creep into AI algorithms, leading to bias and discrimination. Therefore, we cannot really view the impacts of AI models as a binary discussion focused only on gains and losses or costs and benefits, as they govern significant decisions impacting individuals that ripple through societies at large. So regulators right now are at a critical juncture, to create some sort of AI model regulations for contemporary AI models because they're based on an inherently flawed assumption of the existence of a so-called standard human. So this view is very partial and exclusive. It's a very exclusive vision of society and its constituents, and overlooks the impact that AI can have on the underserved, the underrepresented, and the marginalized, which these people actually are the building blocks or bedrocks of the data invisible group that we are talking about. Just to clarify, data invisibility is a consequence of the digital divide across many countries and most specifically developing countries that will likely affect these traditionally marginalized communities such as women, girls, indigenous peoples, and tribal communities, castes, religious and linguistic minorities, the elderly, refugees, migrant workers, the LGBTQIA+ community. So data invisible groups definitely disproportionately bear the brunt of the increased use of technology in our society, and often experience discrimination in three main areas that we have actually kind of researched. So the first one is punishment and policing, where AI and algorithmically driven tools such as facial recognition and predictive policing technologies have increased their utilization by law enforcement. Many of these predictive policing technologies are built upon risk modeling or identifying and ranking individuals based on the probability of engaging in criminal activity. So while this is all well and good, multiple studies have shed light on the historical biases that are woven into the data fed into these predictive policing programs, which actually perpetuates existing over-policing practices of marginalized groups. Another challenge that data invisible groups face is access to essential services and support. We all know that financial services can be a decisive factor in an individual's ability to pursue their economic and social well-being. Therefore, and including automated systems into the mix, they have permeated decision making regarding whether an individual is eligible for or entitled to essential services and support. And this removal of the human emotional component of decision making can push already people that are already in a perilous position even further into hardship by excluding them or shutting them out. And the third challenge that we have looked into that data invisible groups face is movement and border control. So by integrating AI and facial and gait recognition systems, retinal and fingerprint scans, ground sensors, aerial video surveillance, drones, biometric databases, and automated asylum decision-making processes, border control systems have really do contribute to the rise of digital borders. Through my research, I actually came across an instance where migrants or refugees from certain areas of the world have actually started to burn off their fingerprints so they would not be sent back to their native countries. So we need governance and regulatory frameworks for AI and big data to become, and open data to become iterative, adaptive, and go hand in hand with the pace of AI development. But they also need to be built on a foundation of mutual support and global solidarity. So to enable an ecosystem, an AI ecosystem for good would require a minimum set of principles and standards for data governance. The leanest way to ensure this, and ensure that an AI ecosystem is well functioning is by focusing on two elements of data infrastructure. So we have a local data collection and management and data minimization for preserving data privacy. In terms of local data collection and management, governments have almost limitless potential for providing more efficient, effective, and trustworthy public services across sectors through the application of data, as I previously mentioned. So good data governance can contribute to setting a shared vision, which enhances the coherent implementation and coordination and strengthening of institutional regulatory capacity, while at the same time being mindful of not excluding these data invisible groups. So to achieve this, 4 phases of data in government must be considered, and that is data collecting and generating data, storing, securing, and processing data, sharing, curating, and publishing data, and the use and reuse of data. However, there are privacy concerns regarding this. So the data minimization principle can be employed, and through the data minimization principle, organizations will be, can be, and will be required to ensure that the personal data used is adequate, relevant, and limited for what is necessary for the purposes for which it is processed. Yet when we think about what is adequate, relevant, and necessary in developing these AI and machine learning models is very use case specific. So organizations can implement several techniques to develop AI and ML systems that process as little personal data as possible while remaining functional. So we can see that while data minimization techniques do not entirely eliminate risk, they can improve privacy. So there is a wide gamut of technologies for preserving privacy that can be used to minimize data processing during the training phase. So some of these techniques involve modifying and training the data to reduce the extent to which it can be traced back to specific individuals. And an example of this is the rapport algorithm that randomly changes the values of data points belonging to individuals by adding noise to the data. Another privacy preserving mechanism is differential privacy, which is a way to measure whether a model created by an AI or ML algorithm specifically depends on the data of any particular individual used to train it. And another privacy preserving mechanism that we can employ is anonymization, which is the application of privacy preserving techniques that means that certain data used in AI systems is rendered pseudonymous or anonymous. To keep my speech brief, I will just switch to ways that we can reshape the data landscape.
If I can ask you to be brief, that would be really helpful.
Yes.
Because we are running out of time now.
Okay, so to capture and harness the power of data and AI to improve people's lives, we need to understand and find ways to unlock and responsibly reuse private data for the public good through data collaboratives and data stewards. Data collaboratives can, when designed responsibly, can weave together otherwise siloed data and a range of expertise to match data supply with demand fairly and transparently. However, we need human infrastructure to ensure that these data collaboratives are systematic, sustainable, and responsible. And that is where chief data stewards can champion private data for public good purposes and channel its use to organizations that unlock its value to help solve pressing global problems. Thank you very much for your time.
Nick, for rounding up our interventions from the panel. Now, we started this session a little bit later than expected in the program. I promise that we will try and recover some of that time back, but I think it's very important, having heard from a number of panelists on some really important topics today, that we open up the conversation with you, our audience, and give you the opportunity to provide some feedback and comments. And I want to start by making the point that the panel, including the moderator, we represent essentially the academic and research community and non-government organizations. We don't have anyone in the panel representing a government section organization from across the world. So it would be really helpful to bring your perspectives, your comments, and your thoughts on what you have heard today. So I want to open it up at this moment in time. And have we got questions, comments? Banu, you will have to play the role of. And if I can ask my fellow panelists to keep your responses brief to 2 or 3 minutes, then we can give the opportunity to as many of you as possible to respond.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, can you hear me? Testing, testing. So my question was really about, perfect. So it's clear why open data can be incredibly beneficial, but there was also mention of all of the risks that that policy engenders. And there was talk about creating gatekeepers, whether it be the government, whether it be data stewards, to ensure that the data that's publicly available is properly used to, I guess, in the course of socially beneficial projects. So I'm interested to hear from the panelists about who they think those gatekeepers can be, because it's not always the case necessarily that governments or even data stewards will have the right interests at play to address the risks that we brought up. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very interesting and really good question. Miriam, can I ask you to pick this up?
Since I'm a lawyer and an economist, I'm gonna say that I'm working currently on creating an algorithmic human rights impact assessment tool. So this would be one potential safeguard. Instead of weaving ethical issues, only ethical issues such as trustworthiness, fairness, accountability, transparency, we are trying to come up with kind of a playbook that would be used by public policy makers and regulators as, guidelines. So they open up this playbook and, there are certain questions that would guide them into, ascertaining that the automated decision-making tool that they're using in their work is not encroaching on certain human rights. And I think this is very important. So being specific, and also be coming up with a simple framework that can be understood not just by technical persons such as ICT engineers, but also public sector officials that are deploying these automated decision making tools into their everyday work. I think this is very, very, very important. And this playbook is developed together with the World Bank and with the Inter-American Development Bank. And we are going to pilot it in Brazil through the World Economic Center in Brazil. So we're piloting it in public procurement and use of automated decision making in public procurement in Brazil. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Miriam. Ernesto, I think you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it within 1 minute because, well, I wrote a paper on this. So well, everybody has written a paper on this, but well, me too, I'm part of the group. So what I want to say is just more an opinion than I believe that the first panel this morning already had actors who are expert in litigation about the right to access of information. And personally, I believe, of course, we need a balanced act in which you have a priori regulations that will sort of affect the type of model, how it is trained, whatever, but also we need a space for litigation. This is a very important part. And if you ask me my opinion, I would like to say my opinion, this is much more important than the first, because basically it's more common law. We need the use cases. What is inappropriate training of a model? Well, this is not something that you can establish a priori with a mathematical formula. It is something that comes from the interaction of all the actors. So I think that many of the government bodies that already act as a first degree courts for handling cases could be involved. And this is my opinion, that is an important perspective, in addition to whatever we as academics can come out with formal definition of what is appropriate or non-appropriate behavior.
Thank you, Ernesto, and thank you for this really very valid question that we all need to consider. Can I invite other questions or views from especially government colleagues in the room, if there are any? I can, oh yes, please.
Shall I start? Okay, the reuse of open data and access to public data are far not very different situations, but at least in Hungary they operate with the same data categories. Do you see any problem with it, or is there any guide where a supervisory authority can use or be based upon? With, I mean, the distinction and all the others.
Would you like a specific member of the panel to answer? I can invite Ernesto and then Lambros perhaps to come in.
Yes, if I may, Chair, I essentially like to add onto her question and bring something else to fore. And I think this is not only to you, panel, but all the participants here. I see a very interesting tug of war at this conference by people pledging for transparency by design. And there are people who are in fact putting a big question mark for openness of data. So where do we somehow draw a point that both of these very valuable and valid say assertions will come to a balance and will be in semblance? Where is that level where both of these who are arguing for transparency by design and those who are saying that there is a problem of openness of data, where can they come in some kind of where is that point where they will come and meet? Just a point for you to.
Okay, yes, okay. So. Yes, okay, so I would let.
Yeah, I can add one line, which I think it's a very important point that was raised. I believe both are needed, accountability and transparency. The data distinction must be there because the degree of accountability will depend at least on this. So I would link the two things. Of course, you need a priori transparency, especially, for example, on the transformation of the open data. So what are we talking about here? Is the original open data, is open data after fusion, whatever. So there are categories and we need to know the categories because the accountability later will depend on that as well. So I think there is a strong relation. And of course, it's a case by case. Sorry, I don't think we can have all a priori. The accountability is also very important.
On anything, do you have?
It's a very complex issue. I mean, the world is complex. It's not that you label a specific data set as this from the start, and then you have solved the problem forever. Right. And yeah, it's good to have definitions, but I agree about contextualization because context is everything. And you always have to, in whatever you do with data, you always have to have some supervision, some human supervision by an expert, and we lack experts. I think human capacities really are lacking in this. We don't really have people, also it relates to the previous question, I think. We don't really have the people that are experts in doing that, and we need to work on that more. Yeah, public data, it does not mean publicly owned data. It means publicly owned data can be either open or actually not allowed to be open. So it's there are very kind of subtle nuances in how we define things, I would say. Yeah.
the conversation is heating up. I can see a colleague is really keen to ask a question. We may have to restrict it though very quickly because I need to sum up. If you would like, we can extend the session, but I'm conscious of lunch. And I promised we'll try and recover some time. It may not be possible now, but please.
Okay. I was actually struck by your comment to the presentation of Ernesto, which was very nice. But you said that you have been busy negotiating this cross-border sort of use of data for more than a year. But is that your task? Because I think we have, and then you put the faith into the international organization like UNESCO. I think there is an intermediary level. I mean, diplomats, now there are these kind of digital ambassadors who are trying to do this kind of, they are looking for new subjects. And I have been pushing in my life on this e-services, cross-border data exchanges and things like that. But this is a whole new game. I haven't seen it debated in the government circles yet, but I mean, maybe it is time. Thank you.
So a couple of things. The case that I was referring to is not a cross-national one, cross-border one, is one within the UK. And it goes to show what happens in countries that have well-developed systems of accumulating data, either in the public or private sector. So the data is there, there's legislation which is interpreted one way or another. Then you have the academic community which is trying to add value by undertaking projects and needing to have access to this data. But we're not given access. We need to have data sharing agreements in place. They are not open data, but there's reluctance to release that data because of misunderstandings, misinterpretations in the law, and techniques like transfer learning and federated learning. This is what we've been working on to try and address this problem. In UAE and in other countries, developing and transitioning countries where you don't have these frameworks already in place, sometimes it's easier to have data sharing agreements in place or to open up data. That's the point I was trying to make. Cross-border is a new ball game. We really need to look into that as well. There were a couple of other questions. Can I?
Thank you. My question comes from a regulatory perspective, and that is, when we're looking for solutions to regulate AI, we appear to be looking to solutions that address the impact of AI on existing rights. And I take the panel's point about ethics versus legal rights. If that is the case, who is the custodian of that level of regulation? Should it be for information access or privacy, individual commissioners potentially who are the existing regulators who need to expand their jurisdictions, or is it a whole new regulatory approach?
This is your.
Okay. So it depends where you come from. No. Of the GDPR, or the proposed draft EU Act, you will have one approach, like horizontal, approach, technology agnostic in terms of impact and outcomes. And then in the US, you do have this vertical perspective, which is kind of sectoral perspective. I would say that I think I'm a proponent of we need to take into consideration not just governments and consumers. We need to take into consideration also micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, and take into consideration that they will have to also develop artificial intelligence, and they will have to collaborate with the public sector. So I think a hybrid model would come into place, where you take into consideration the outcomes, you take into consideration the impact, but also you take into consideration the specific sector and the applications of AI and other emerging technologies in this specific sector, be it retail, health, because as I mentioned, not all data has been created equal, and in different sectors, different data types and data sets carry different gravitas in terms of sensitivity. Thank you.
One last question.
1.5.
No, 1.5, but I will have to restrict you. Banu, you're going to come last. Please, the lady. Where's the microphone? Thank you.
Very quick question. From what I understand, this seems to have very, very clear and very strong implications for people on the ground. And I'm afraid what I see is that this is still in a very dense space. So for most people who are going to be most impacted by AI, they're not really stakeholders in these conversations. And my question, therefore, is that what efforts are being made currently to actually sort of, bring people who are going to be finally impacted by some of these algorithms, machine learning, all this AI technology into the framework for consultation, for discussion, for participation, because finally what comes out is really what determines how they are able to access even their basic rights. So that's.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. I'll say a couple of words and then Ernesto is keen to answer. So in the UK, we're doing a lot of these as part of research projects that we are running. We are trying to raise awareness. We have public lectures and invite the public to come in, demonstrations to explain the potential of AI and machine learning, the goods, but also the risks, so that the public understand what it means when they release data or when they agree on terms and conditions without reading the subtext. Ernesto.
I just wanted to mention the fact that, and I'm talking now from a UAE perspective, in the UAE, we have a minister for artificial intelligence. This was one of the first ministries of this type to be created. And of course, it is a, thank you very much. I didn't touch it, sir. So it is something that went to the headlines of a lot of newspapers. But if you look at behind the scenes, how it operates, it is part of the decision process about the data usage for the AI modeling. Let me give you a very quick example. One health type of initiatives in which you put together healthy living, nutrition, stuff like that. These require big fusion of data. And the AI authority is there from the beginning. So I think that this is also an interesting point. And we should have the involvement of the regulatory authority of AI, not after the fact, only case by case, but as part of the data collection strategy at the beginning. I'm sure you have something.
Yes, I would like to highlight several initiatives. They're kind of grassroots and they're supported by foundations. So you have the Mozilla Foundation that works in Africa. So that would be one. And also the Fair Forward GIZ initiative that again works in Africa. And then in Southeast Asia, you have the Digital Asia Accelerator, and in Latin America and the Caribbean, you have the, oh my goodness, it's FAIRLAC. So the Inter-American Development Bank has a regulatory sandbox that engages not just with governments, but also with populations like that represent the marginalized groups, and also think tanks, and they work together on these very important issues. And also, I think USAID, I work with USAID a lot, and I've seen also USAID shift their focus on localization, context, and human rights.
Half a minute.
Half a minute. Oh, thank you so much. Just one thing, if we're talking about UNESCO's Open Data Guidelines, and one of the things that I wish to bring forth here is, I see that there is an empty chair, and who's missing there is someone who would actually put a cost to everything that we have been talking about. We are primarily talking about data governance, and we are talking about the processes that involves in governing this data, but no one is talking about, when we talk about data, we have to get hardware, and Godfrey is here, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it, because starting this year until now, there has been 550 cases of data breaches, around the world. And each of these data breaches to the organizers have cost something like $4.5 million, not taking into consideration of the cost that has been incurred by individual users to these services. So think about it, it's a lot, but every time we need to get over it, we require to buy new hardware, and that will somehow benefit someone by spending $63 million for 451 data points, something that he mentioned yesterday. So how we will somehow bring it within the broader and very important framework of cost effectiveness of this data guideline. Thank you so much. These are my house.
Okay, I don't know if any of the panelists want to respond very quickly, or we can leave it as an open question. Because it's such a big question that you're raising, Banu. Lambrus.
Governments have been very slow in addressing these issues compared to the private sector. And I think that's really first point that we can all agree. And the other thing is that the investment is needed from the governments. I mean, it's not really just having the frameworks in place or having some policies in place. These policies need to be supported by actual investments in a lot of different forms, in terms of training and education, in terms of public awareness, in terms of actual tools and technologies to actually make this happen, as you say. And it's going to be quite a considerable cost, but in the end, this is what will bring the citizen in the driver's seat. And so the control goes back to the citizens and societies, and rather than actually have administration happen.
Thank you. So it falls on to me as the moderator of the panel to summarize, and I have kept some notes, but I'll try and keep it brief. So we have heard about the value of open data and solutions and how we can develop data commons and derive value for the common good, but also individuals. We have also heard about the risks and challenges that remain, many of them, and we've had a heated conversation. There's a clear need to develop frameworks to support open AI and solutions in an ethical and human rights preserving way. And governments have a significant role to play here. We academics and non-government organizations, we cannot make all the progress ourselves. But beyond frameworks, there's a gap between the planning and the frameworks, what we have already in place in terms of tools, and then the actual implementation on the other side of things. So there's a skills gap there. We've heard this word quite a lot today that I want to highlight. There's a lack of capacity. How do we bridge the gap? We need infrastructure, financial resources. The human resource is really important. So I started by saying we wanted to make a contribution to the Tashkent Declaration, and it's clear that open data has a place, open solutions have a place in the Tashkent Declaration, and we need to find a way to weave this in. So we will be working with the authors. But I also wanted to take this opportunity and essentially almost issue like a call for action to all of us in the room today, because we are representing others in this room. We can derive value from open data, but we need stakeholders to work together to develop proper frameworks. We can only do this if we work in a cross-sector and cross-disciplinary way. We need leadership and commitment from government organizations, including commitment to resources. The academic and research community is keen to support. You have seen this here today. And we want to offer our support and help. So please call upon us, and we have networks behind us that can help on the implementation on the ground. UNESCO, I want to highlight, has developed draft guidelines on a number of topics: open data for AI, open data and AI for government and the public sector, the invisible groups and data. And we would be keen to hear back from the audience, have feedback and input into this so that we can make sure that they are up to speed and they reflect what needs to be done. So I'm going to stop here, but before I do so, I truly want to thank the panelists for giving us amazing presentations today, prompting us to think, all of us. It has generated a lot of thoughts, and I hope you have enjoyed the conversation. So thank you very much. We have overrun by 2 or 3 minutes, but I hope you have enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay.